Hello, street leaders. This is question 37 on ACT English Test 59F, and it is on page 17. We're in passage 3, An American Griot, about Mary Carter Smith. And this is a usage and mechanics question. It's dealing with the grammar. And right away, we look at the answers. We see periods, semicolons, and commas, she. Right away, we're suspecting to use our T-chart. But let's look at the sentence. The underlined portion is Ellie, comma, A. All along, she was telling stories. That's the sentence. All along, she was telling stories. We then have a dash, and that dash tells you we're going to come up with some big, long explanation about what we just said. We're going to tell you about those stories. All along, she was telling stories. Everything from social satire, that's like Richard Pryor, to her retelling of Cinderella as Cindy Ellie. And then, right, that Ellie's underlined. Then you have a comma. And then this comma does the same thing the dash does. It tells you about Cindy Ellie. So the dash, everything from social satire to her retelling of Cinderella as Cindy Ellie, that's telling you about the stories. And now we're going to tell you about her story, Cindy Ellie. Ellie, so the underlined portion is as Cindy. Cindy's okay, and then Ellie's okay, comma, A. Now, Ellie's part of all the answer choices, so we know the Ellie's okay. The question is, do we want a comma, a poor African-American girl? Do we want a period, and then a poor African-American girl? Do we want C, Ellie, colon, a poor African-American girl? Or D, Ellie, comma, she was a poor African-American girl? First thing, even when the T-chart does not help you find the wrong answer, the T-chart is just as useful to eliminating even if the T-chart doesn't make you pick the right answer, the T-chart can help you knock out wrong answers. Right away, if you know your T-chart on pages 2, 3, and 4, you should throw away B and C automatically. You don't even waste time and energy thinking about them. Why? Because B and C are the same. Ellie, period A, and Ellie, colon, small a, those are interchangeable. Periods and semicolons are interchangeable. And if they're both interchangeable, that means they're both wrong, because there can only be one right answer. And if one's right, the other one's right. If one's wrong, they're both wrong. So you throw away B and C right away. Now you're guessing A or D. Good work. Whether you get the right answer or not, I don't care, because if you just guess top or bottom after you knock out 2 answers, if you do that on 2 questions, you're going to get the right answer. Well, half the time. And that's all we really need. So our answer is A, no change, Cindy Ellie, comma, a poor African-American girl. Or D, Cindy Ellie, comma, she was a poor African-American girl. And then, so now we're going to finish the next part of the sentence to hear what it's saying. So to her retelling of Cinderella as Cindy Ellie, comma, a poor African-American girl whose rags to riches, whose rags are transformed into magnificent American-style gowns. All right, D is wrong because of the comma rule. All right, why is D wrong? Because if you put she was a, you make it a sentence. Like she was a poor, like you should put she was a poor African-American girl whose rags to riches transformed into African-style gowns. Sorry about the riches there. Yeah, that's a comma splice. D is wrong because it's a comma splice. Don't pick it. Never pick the comma splice. Know it when you see it. Why is it a comma splice? Because you're making a poor African-American girl into she was a poor African-American girl. That is a complete sentence. You can put she was a poor African-American girl, period. All right? And if you do that, you can't put what should be a sentence or could be a sentence next to another sentence together as 2 baby sentences, and then just separate those 2 sentences with a comma. That's wrong. That's always wrong. It's called a comma splice. A comma is not enough to separate 2 complete could-be sentence thoughts. And so that's why D is wrong. That only leaves us with the correct answer of A. I'm going to explain now why A is correct. A poor African-American girl, that comma is telling you who Cindy Ellie is. There's no verb here. A poor African-American girl whose rags are transformed into magnificent African-style gowns, there's no verb. That's not even a clause. That's just one giant adjective. there's a verb there, are transformed, but that verb is part of a whose rags are transformed. It's part of its own little clause within this big chunk of words. So there's no real actual main verb in the group of words we call a poor African-American girl whose rags are transformed. There's no verb there. You need to keep going. A poor African-American girl whose rags are transformed became a princess. See, now you have a main verb. Became. A poor African-American girl whose rags are transformed became a princess. That's not an option, though. So instead, everything after the comma is one big adjective providing details about Cindy Ellie. And that's why A is correct. It's not a sentence. Everything after the Ellie comma is not a sentence. It's just a giant fragment. And a fragment can be, a big detailed complex fragment can be separated from the thing it's describing with a comma for clarity's sake, to make things more clear and to give you a pause. I hope this made sense. Thank you for watching and thank you for your hard work.